Coming up, Liz Wharton joins us to talk about drones and other emerging technologies. Paul and I tackle the work required to actually have an opinion, along with a couple other articles for insights. And we let you know how the Carbon Black IPO fared, along with some other innovation updates of the week. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Business Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by, are you getting pressure to improve your data security? Would you like a faster, easier, better way to patch? Then you need to check out Automox. Automox is a cloud-native platform that patches and manages every endpoint, even remote servers and devices, including Windows, Mac, Linux, and third-party software from a single dashboard. Improve your cyber hygiene, reduce your attack surface, and save 90% of the effort you spend patching. Automox, your patching system of record. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Hello and welcome. Business Security Weekly number 84. Man, it feels like we're getting old. Recorded Monday, May 7th, 2018. This is the show where we're exploring the business of security so we can improve the security of business. We want to be your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. It's going to be a big theme of today's show. Still Michael Santarcangelo, your straight-talking guide to overcome friction, translate value into understanding, and get better results. And joining me from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, and we'll be back together this week in Boston, your friend of mine, Paul Asadoorian.
Thank you, Michael. I know, I'm so excited. We get to spend time together at a conference. Of course, a conference coming up means that I could be presenting at it. This one I'm actually presenting, which means my brain and much of my time are focused on doing my slides.
Can I tell you how nice it is to say, I'm going to go to the conference. I'm going to see my friend Paul talk. Yeah. I'm going to go talk to people. We're going to try out the value prop scorecard. I'm not presenting. Now, I've got client stuff Thursday and Friday, so it's going to be a busy week for me. But it's kind of nice not to be presenting at a conference.
And you know what's cool? You know, we talk about the business of security and the security business. And this conference, I think, is really about, bringing together the security community as well as business leaders, as well as innovation. In my talk, I've kind of tuned it as such. Really talks about our journey in implementing an application using Docker and some of the business decisions I had to make, coupled with some of the technical stuff. So the more I think about it and kind of work with them, like this is a really good tactic that I have for this presentation. We'll see if the content holds up. I do get to talk about a security incident that we had, which is really fun. And I'll probably also do a technical segment just on that security incident on Paul Security Weekly. In the effort of full disclosure, whenever we have a security incident, which thankfully turned out to be really nothing, I think it's kind of anticlimactic, but, I'll talk about it nonetheless. Like the lamest malware ever. Like, to figure out what it was doing, I just had to upload it to VirusTotal. And I was like, that's what it does.
I feel like you're spinning me now like your Twitter. I'm just saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
So nothing to see here. It was small. It was not a big deal. I feel like this is what you should say. I should speak with my attorney, but our guest today is not your attorney.
Good segue, Michael.
We're trying every now and then.
That was spot on.
I'm excited. Liz Wharton and I have engaged on Twitter for years. Like if you told me it was a decade, it wouldn't shock me. And she goes by Lawyer Liz. I'll remind you that again. But if you're one of her 6,000 plus followers, Lawyer Liz has got this absolutely fantastic blend of insights across the board, including proper Southern etiquette, which is important to me living here in the South, and I always enjoy it. So we invited Liz to join the program, talk with us about emerging technologies and drones. She's really become the leading expert in drones and looking at a lot of legal issues around them. So Liz, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Oh, thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
No, it's exciting. So We asked this question of a lot of people, and I'm really curious about it here. How did you end up where you are? Like combining technology, you've got pretty impressive cybersecurity chops, you've got a law degree, you're practicing law. Like how did all of that end up coming together?
Well, like any good origin story, it was a combination of being in the wrong places at the right times. That I happened to know, the company you keep when my brother was going to 2,600 meetings in Atlanta before he could drive. My grandfather was teaching us on his Commodore 64 in the base, the fallout shelter of his farm.
Oh.
And so when enough people started asking questions, you're out at happy hour and it's, hey, what about this? And it gets tiresome explaining, well, I'm not at a technology level. It's like, you know what? Fine. I love a good challenge. Let's figure this out and ask me again when I'm not 3 drinks into the evening. So it just kind of blossomed from there. And when you're looking at attending your 10th or 11th Black Hat and DEF CON this year, it's like, oof, it's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's funny too. So you've obviously seen a lot of change in it, and we talked a little bit before the show. So you were in private practice for a number of years, and you've recently switched over, and you actually now work for a major city in the U.S., specifically looking at drone policy, among other things. How did you make that change? Was that you seeking out something different, or did somebody come to you and make you an offer that just seemed awesome?
It was a combination. I've never been one to turn down a challenge. And in this case, the airport and the city were looking to bring in an attorney to handle the technology projects. And my timing couldn't have been better because they're looking at how do we incorporate drones into the airport? How do we, one of the projects on my desk is we're looking at IoT smart city autonomous vehicles. We're going to try to get a shuttle to start going through the streets of Atlanta.
When you talk about their need to have a lawyer as part of it, what was their driver, right? Like we like to ask here, what problem were they trying to solve? So what does the legal expertise bring to the mix?
And I don't even know that they were aware specifically of the problem that I'm solving, because originally it was, oh, so you understand something about contracts, you understand about procurement, you've worked in local, for local and state and federal government, so you have an understanding. And admittedly, those first couple of conversations with my client, with the technology department, where they were thinking, they were just describing, here's the contract, here's the scope of work. And when I suddenly say, oh, okay, I see where you're looking at schematics for a DAS, and I can say, oh, okay, now I see where you've got this, where you've got this. Well, what about coverage here? And that threw them for a loop that they quickly embraced very wholeheartedly.
Well,
and
I think it would be
took
similar,
advantage of.
I think it'd be similar to, why many people would engage with an attorney, and that's to understand and perhaps manage your liability. And it sounds like that's what the city's doing with technology and trying to understand their liability, correct?
Well, and it's not even just that, but it's also understanding what they can. So they have a crazy idea of, what if we connect this to this? What if we bring in this kind of innovation? Or how do we, like, for example, we're doing a lot of work with the FAA on drones at the airfield. And to be able to have someone that can, instead of being, lawyers, we're mean, we're boring, we're the no. And so to have someone that says, okay, all right, let's see, tell me what you're actually trying to do, and let's figure out how to get you there, because the innovation's coming or the technology's here. How do we use it to the city and the citizens' advantage?
How does that impact businesses that are in the drone, market in any capacity? I'm sure they must have a lot of questions about like, how does that impact my market? And I've, spoken with investors. A lot of times they stay away from technology or certain marketplaces that have a tendency to be too volatile because of regulation. How does that translate into the drone marketplace?
Well, you saw this big rush of service providers that, oh, we have a drone. Our drone is different. Well, that kind of petered out a little bit. And then it was, well, our drone can do this, or we have a drone detection deterrent business or model. And having a city that's embracing innovation and a familiar face in the law department that is able to say, all right, talk to me. And if we're trying to set up and have all of these different, all right, you want to do a test? Let's figure out a way to do it safely. Let's go through that. So from a business perspective, it's actually expediting. I mean, they're getting the answers or the opportunities to grow and develop and build their ideas. Whereas if you have law departments that don't understand, then their immediate response is going to be no, and you've just killed an entire marketplace and opportunity for your city.
Or you just don't get an answer, right? You have to wait I think that's some, at least my experience with the FDA, right, is you don't get an answer to know how you can operate safely. It sounds in this case the FCC is providing guidance in a quicker fashion.
Well, the poor FAA in this case is not ready for, or they're not in the business of innovation. Mm-hmm. They're in the business of safety. So you've got the FAA that's trying to, as they call it, crawl, walk, run. And cities don't always, you have a department that sees a potential solution for a problem where they can get data faster, better, more securely. And so my job is to help balance those. And it's been fun.
Liz, when we talk about drones in airports, what's the driving concern? Like, what's the use case? Are people worried about residents flying drones too close to the airport to try to get a view of it, to see it? Are they worried more about people trying to profile an airport? Or is it simpler, like instead of worrying about hitting a bird, they're worried about hitting a strike on a plane taking off for landing? Or is it kind of all of those? Like, when we say it, like, it instantly makes sense, and then I go, wait, what's the actual problem? So when you look at drones with just airports, I know we can go broader into the city, but drones and airports, what are some of the top use cases that people are looking at?
Well, and the lawyer in me does need to say this is not legal advice. These are merely my musings and chatting with, a Yankee and a Southerner on topics in your audience. So with that aside, we see all the above. We need to worry about the safety of our aircraft. I mean, as the world's busiest airport, we have 2 takeoffs, I believe it is, almost every minute. Wow. And so to keep that schedule, any interruption and any potential safety impediment is immediately a concern. If you have, be it a bird, or in some cases, if somebody's luggage flies open from a luggage cart and suddenly we have objects on the runway, we have to start taking measures for that. We don't want to shut down a runway because there's a drone that we weren't expecting to be there, and dealing with that. Then, as the best way I can describe it is, airports are tiny cities themselves. And so with a city, you have construction, you have opportunities for security. So you have those uses of, we're building different parking facilities, we're expanding and adding on to our main terminal facilities. I mean, we have a $6 billion infrastructure project. And if we can get mapping and that kind of data on the progress, we want that. Then we also have to do the daily maintenance of the runways. And so if we can use drones to get a better, if it takes 20 minutes to shut down a runway to get a runway inspection and mapping, as opposed to an hour through traditional surveying, we want the 20-minute method that gets us better data that we can use for other projects. So all of that kind of goes into it, which makes it exciting and a challenge to
What
balance each of those
what's been
aspects.
the biggest surprise? So I know you've been covering this for a while, but if I just first thought, biggest surprise when you've looked at it, biggest use, biggest threat, biggest whatever that you've come across so far. What's kind of surprised you?
Uh, Looking at, or that make having people make that transition of, oh, this is a new technology, as if we haven't been using cameras, as if we haven't been using model aircraft, and overlooking kind of that technology side of it. That one of the first things in any presentation, be it internal or external, that I'm giving is that don't look at just the drone aircraft. It's new, it's shiny, but it's not that new. Don't forget the software, the systems, all the little, SDRs, the software defined radios, all the sensors. Those have been in use for much longer, and those are going to offer the greatest benefits but pose the biggest risks.
That's a great point. All right, so then when you look at drones and you're looking at a city, and you're looking at a city like Atlanta, so you've got was it Olympic Centennial Park? You've got a couple really cool areas in the downtown section. You got the brand new Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You're going to be hosting a Super Bowl there, so I can see then where you have to start looking at, are people allowed to use drones in public streets, and what can and can't they do? So how, like, what are you finding? Are people just like popping drones out of the back of their car and zooming around? And are they allowed to do that? Like, what's the current state of somebody using a drone in the city of Atlanta right now? Roughly, not
Well,
looking for
and
legal
it
advice.
depends on what they're using it for.
Okay.
And if someone is flying a drone as a hobbyist, so just the curiosity element, that's a whole different regulatory scheme. In fact, it's a pretty hands-off. The FAA doesn't really get involved up to a point. If they're using them for business purposes, so they're streaming, they want to get a video that they're going to put on their subscription YouTube channel or sell something, then that's different. So what we're trying to do is balance that and permit, encourage the dreamers, the makers, the tinkerers, but in allowing the media to CNN's aerial program, which has been on the cutting edge of using drones for media purposes in urban areas. How do you permit them to come in and other news organizations while controlling that airspace, that if there's an emergency and we had a bridge collapse, would it have been helpful to have an aerial vantage point from a drone for that, for the firefighting? And with that, you can't fly over people without express authorization from the FAA. You can't, go within, you can't have certain payloads. It becomes a bit of a free-for-all, though, when you don't really have much you can do other than just shut down the airspace if folks aren't playing well together.
And given Atlanta's the busiest airport in the world, does it impose different restrictions than other airports? I know our mutual friend, Kevin Finisterre, we've actually talked about this. We've had Kevin on the show and talked about, he lives in a proximity of an airport where he has to give notification if he's going to fly a drone in a certain capacity or a certain altitude. So are there different restrictions on the Atlanta airport?
So there's different restrictions within certain mileage. The FAA is actually rolling out a new program. Atlanta's in, I think, the second or fourth wave of this, but the Lance system. So there will be the ability for both commercial as well as hobbyist flyers, such as Kevin, to go on to this web portal and receive permission to fly, or not, but generally it is permission to fly within different distances of the airport. But where we have to pay closer attention is not just surrounding the airport, but within the airfield itself. So coming within our secured environment and standing on the runway or next to it, or the airlines are looking at how do they incorporate drones for aircraft inspections. Well, they're located within our secured area. So we have to have different restrictions for that, as opposed to 3 miles outside if there's a movie filming and they want to use drones. Well, that's a different analysis.
I know in some scenarios they had to call the airport and tell them that they were flying a drone. I think in Atlanta's case that probably doesn't work. As you mentioned before, like interruptions are really bad, right?
Interruptions are bad, but if you want to fly around, and we also have Peachtree DeKalb Airport, which is nearby McCollum Field, and it depends on the classification of airspace, the level of permission, and really it's just, hey, tell us you're going to be there so that if you're within one of the approaches, we can adjust or ask you to adjust your flight plan. But yeah, the notification process is going to become easier. The actual approval process is not. When you get within certain distances of certain airports, it's still not going to be that. You're still going to have to jump through some additional hoops. But we'll tell you what those hoops are.
Right.
Rather than hiding the ball.
No, I like that. All right. And then you talked about autonomous cars and starting to take a look at that. So do you find it's a completely different set of challenges because it's a completely different type of technology? Or is it the same thing? You're looking at some of the similarities in terms of sensors and systems and elements that we're familiar with. They're just packaged in a new way. So how are you approaching that?
Well, that takes a little bit more attention because with drones, they go up and then they're flying around. That's not necessarily new. With autonomous vehicles, depending on their navigation system and how they're set up, that's requiring a little additional thought because we don't have the infrastructure automatically built in. We're having to adjust that. But as the city is looking at some smart city projects, and we have some testing already underway for different smart water meters and other things, that since we're going ahead and putting that infrastructure in already, we're just figuring out how to get everything to, as I said, play nicely together and in a safe manner so that you don't end up. I mean, I always tell people my goal is to keep the projects off the front page of the newspaper for bad things, rather for good things. Like we don't want to be that project.
Yeah, and there was a Black Mirror episode, and then there was an actual event, right? Where I think an Uber autonomous vehicle injured and killed someone. Was that the headline that I read? I think we talked about it on the show.
The one out in Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple, and even in Vegas, they've had there have been crashes where, I mean, that's not even looking at Tesla's issues, where some of the Tesla cars have, they were watching the movie and not on the wheel and went into the side of a truck. We don't want that if we can avoid it.
When you say smart city, sorry, and I'm kind of bouncing, but I'm looking to pull some of this together because I think the thing that I'm still fascinated by, Liz, is that you've built on this rich heritage of experience and you're cutting edge. Because you said something before, and I just want to take a second, amplify it, and praise you for it. Lawyers are known for saying no. Security people are known for saying no. And you're all like, hey, I'm here. What you want to get done? I'll help you, which has got to throw people for a loop. Right? Like you're not saying no for security. You're not saying no for legal reasons. You're like, we can figure it out. Let's do it. Come on. And
like, let's minimize these risks. Like, let's identify the risks. What are the challenges? And because if you say no, I mean, think about it in the security context. You tell people, well, you can't connect to this. You can't use this software, you can't do things in our environment. It's not secure. Okie dokie, they will still do it. They just won't tell you that they've done it. And so now you have unknowns within your environment, and how do you plan for that? So rather than having people hide what they're doing, I try to encourage them, like, tell me about it. We will find a way. And if we can't, let's look at what your ultimate goal was, and let's see if we can't just find a different vehicle to get there. And it makes it fun. I love solving challenges, or it's like, all right, game on, let's figure this out. So for me, this is just the best of all the worlds. I get to kind of pull and secretly start hitting up all my different resources going, hey, I've got this problem. How would you, so like, am I crazy in thinking we could do this, this, and this, or what am I missing? And that's when I start bringing in experts for example, looking at the drones, we invited researchers from Georgia Tech. We invited manufacturers. We invited Kevin Finisterre. Said, let's talk to the people who are doing this and figure out how we can all work together.
I love that. Is that an approach that you've always had, or is it something that you've developed into over years of both practicing law and looking at security to say, well, if we keep saying no, as you pointed out, they're going to do it anyway, not tell me about it. Gosh, it's easier just to say yes and help get there. Was that an approach you had, or is that something that you've had to learn?
I have been known, I played hockey in college on the men's hockey team because there wasn't a women's team. And in high school, when I had tried to go play in rec leagues, they're like, well, you're a girl. I said, thank you for noticing.
Yeah,
but
yes.
I want to play hockey. So how do I play hockey? And so, giving me that challenge of, well, you can't do it. I was like, all right, well, I'll just play in college. No big deal. I'll just self-teach, figure out how to do this. And so I think that's just been part of my nature, but I try to encourage it as well with the junior attorneys that I work with, saying, hey, if we do this, the client's going to do it. They're just not going to tell us. And then it's going to be very expensive and awkward. And let's avoid that.
Do you find, so I'm excited about this. And I think I had seen something before about the hockey. So now we got a lot to talk about down the road. But on this point, it seems to me that you're having a blast. And if you can counsel junior attorneys and mentor new people into it and say, don't worry about all the things that can go wrong. Go figure out what they want to go right, figure out how to get there and minimize these problems. That almost feels like it's a more rewarding career for everybody, right? It's a little extra work maybe on one end, but if you're getting things done and people are excited and you can see the results, that feels more rewarding. Any even anecdotal insight that does in fact make for, are you finding the people that you're working with are generally happier, maybe staying a little longer? Is it easy to recruit people because you're not telling people no, you're solving cool problems on a cutting edge?
I found that the folks more on the client side, that they're excited about working with legal, and they're excited about, well, okay, let's get creative. That how can we, and when I say creative, I don't mean let's skirt the rules, but kind of let's look at the wide world and all these innovations around us and how can they solve our problems, challenges, or how can they make us better, faster, stronger? And that is exciting for them. So I think I see that kind of feedback from, wow, it's so refreshing to work with you. I was like, yes. And as someone who lives within the city and benefits directly from all of this, yes, do this, save me money, give me better services with improved data analytics. And whether the junior attorneys are benefiting from that, I don't know. I hope so. But the clients are certainly, so the departments and really the people who are the most important part of that equation are finding it energizing.
No, I love it. And I think that's a good analog for everybody looking at this. I know you run your own podcast. Tell us quick about that, where people can find it if they want to keep filling on these issues with you, because I like in the intro where you say, look, we're not talking about legal stuff here. So what it's called Buzz Off with Lawyer Liz.
Yes.
How did that get started? What do you tend to talk about?
I was a guest on a friend's show and talking about drones, and the owner of the station happened to be running the boards when we did the interview. And he said, you're not your average lawyer. I said, nope. You know something about this? Yes. He's like, all right, how would you like your own radio show? I said, and I didn't know any better to say no. So I said, wait, you're going to give me an opportunity once a week to talk about whatever strikes my fancy? Fasten your seatbelt. This is awesome. So America's Web Radio, and it's americaswebradio.com or Lawyer Liz podcast on iTunes. And it's genuinely whatever has caught my eye that, week or months in the Internet of Things, that broader technology picture. So not just drones, not just autonomous vehicles, but looking at, we did a series on the voting machines, and occasionally we'll do series on how our TV and video games and everything, they're selling us false promises. I mean, where's my hoverboard? And looking at some of those. So please tune in. And if folks have ideas or topics to talk about, absolutely. I'm always open to suggestions.
That's awesome. And then people can find you at Twitter at Lawyer Liz.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Paul, anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, as security professionals, we often talk about things that are related to the law. And we always have this caveat, we're not lawyers, but now we have an opportunity to have an attorney on the show. What are some of the most popular questions that you get from security professionals, business or on the research side, that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, one of my favorite questions was how I got into drones was, so I want to do this pen test, and what if I put my SDR and my software, what if I was doing sniffing, spoofing, that kind of stuff on a drone? And I thought, okay, let's look at underlying whether that's legal. So I love it when folks are trying to get creative of, can I do this as a blanket statement, not realizing all of the underlying, if it's dealing with radios, or what does the FCC have to say about this? Mm-hmm. What is the FAA? I mean, I did a talk ages ago at B-Sides Las Vegas on FCC, FAA, FTC, FU on Fired Up, because these regulatory agencies are getting involved in technology and information security in ways you weren't thinking about. So let's look at that approach. And that to me is most rewarding, because it's helping people do their research, but minimizing the chance that they'll need bail money and a litigator on retainer.
It's good to know, because we have those conversations all the time amongst pen testers. If I were to do this on a test, you think that's legal? And I'm like, oh no, we need to find a lawyer like Stat. So now we might have some more questions for you, Liz.
Absolutely. Those brainstorming sessions of, all right, well then just make sure you cover that in your engagement, and keep, the get out of jail free, keep a copy of the engagement and the CEO's business card in your back pocket. And along with your, the attorney's name, number, and a good bail bonds company.
And I think in terms of radio communications go, a lot of my friends that do those style pen tests are ham radio operators. And I'm not saying that's necessarily going to get you out of trouble, but it's certainly, you gain so much knowledge and awareness of just what you can and can't do just by having the license. I would encourage that, and I'm sure you would as well, Liz.
Oh, absolutely. Even for me, I started studying for the tests, and admittedly have fallen off with that. But getting that understanding not only improves the legal aspects, but from the non-pen tester side, my thing is always get in there, get knee deep into an issue, because when someone calls with a question, I don't want to have to say, well, I don't really know. I want to have an actual understanding of what they're talking about, what is involved. And so anything that will help further your knowledge, and if it's an exam where they will give you all of the questions ahead of time, why would you not study for it,
right,
and take it? And it does, especially with drones. And if you're doing FPV flying and you're building your own aircraft, then you need to have that license, because you're actually adding the radio controlled elements to it.
Awesome. Michael?
No, I love
Closing
it.
questions?
I mean, we could talk more. We didn't even get to sweet tea, so we'll have to save that for our etiquette version. But I'm actually like I'm excited. Like I'm excited at the things that you're doing. I'm excited that you're doing them. It's a good example, and this is why I really wanted you on Business Security Weekly. So now other leaders can say, "Wow!" So if you say yes and you get involved and you have these conversations, we've talked a lot about as a security leader today, getting to know your legal side. I think it's great to see somebody on the legal side saying, "Yeah, we got to go have these conversations." This to me is encouraging because we're going to start seeing it. You're a leader in that space. On a lot of fronts, but it's exciting stuff. So I'm really excited you're able to join us. People can check you out at Lawyer Liz on Twitter. They can check out the Buzz Off with Lawyer Liz show, and hopefully we'll get you back on the program sometime soon. In fact, I'd say anytime you want, Liz, just let us know, and we can talk about any of these issues that you think are exciting, and we'll happily do that. With that, we're going to take a quick break. Good chance to check us out at securityweekly.com. You can check out all the shows that we have. We've pretty much got you covered if you're trying to get one of these things done. And you can also check out our on-demand content. When we come back, Paul and I are going to talk about what it truly takes to hold an opinion.
I need it from the top.